video?
Just let the camera can play such prominent people.
ठीक है. So this Masood Hussain is the folder.
A very warm welcome to all of you this evening on behalf of the Raza Foundation and the India International Center. We have been running this series called Art Matters. Today is the 38th. We first started with panel discussions and then converted into conversations. We ran short of panelists and things of that kind. So we thought we'll concentrate on individual artists. And we have in this series also people like Krishan Khanna, Arpita Singh, Neelima Sheikh, M.K. Raina, Geeta Kapoor, Gayatri Sinha, etc. And today, in the 50, we are coinciding this conversation with SALIMA ji and SADANAND with a special exhibition called Revisiting Beauty, curated by Tunti Chauhan and being shown at the moment at the Threshold Gallery. We are particularly happy and grateful that SALIMA ji has made it. Somebody sent an email to me yesterday asking whether it would be possible for her to come at all. And I emailed back that she is already here, safe and already lodged in the IIC. Now, as you know, I don't have to introduce SALIMA ji, but she is a very major figure and major cultural figure in Pakistan and has also been an anti-nuclear weapon activist. And she has been coming here, she has a large number of friends, she has taught art, she has written on art, she has curated important art shows. We saw one on the Zorbag recently, and so it is a very special privilege to have her with us this evening. And Sadanand Menon, everybody knows Sadanand Menon, so I don't have to introduce him, except to assert that he is a friend who keeps on ditching you all too often. But the reason seemed to be that whenever I invite him, that date he's already booked somewhere. And it covers the whole breadth and length of India and also Europe or whatever. But he is also a trustee of the Raza Foundation, whose meetings he mostly attends by being absent. Sadanand Menon has been a cultural critic, a very sharp mind, and traverses a large number of disciplines of performance, visuality, and literature with equal ease and confidence. So we have Sadanand Menon and SALIMA HASHMI, and my job with that is over. I leave it to them. The rules of the game would be that they will have about an hour unto themselves to do whatever they want to do with us and with each other. And then there will be some time to the audience to make brief comments, and you better think of those questions or whatever. They have to be brief, if possible witty. Don't get goddamn serious. This country is getting very, very serious these days, particularly. And the notion is around, is the concept and practice of beauty is still possible in the arts? We know it is possible in the performing arts. In music, you can still talk of beauty. In dance, you can, of course, talk of beauty. But in theater, literature, and visual arts, beauty seems to be a rare word mention. You mentioned struggle and disruptions and dislocations and tensions and what you have, all of them. but you seldom mention beauty. It will be hard to find a person who will claim, a visual artist or a writer or a theatre person saying, I want to explore or create beauty. Because he'll be immediately dismissed as a reactionary, as somebody who's not desirable in these conditions in which we are living, etc., etc. And the fact remains that in spite of everything that happens to us or doesn't happen to us, our concern for beauty remains subterraneously alive. We still look for moments of beauty, aspects of beauty, objects of beauty to make our lives a little more livable and perhaps a little more tolerable. But be that as it may, that's not my job. My job was to invite these people. We are very grateful that they're here, and we are also very grateful to you that you're all here. This we'll do at the end, because otherwise where would they keep it? So there you are, Salima ji and Sadanand. और अपने चल बोले को मरोड़ दीजिए, शांत कर दीजिए.
Is it ladies first? So as you, firstly I'm here, yes. And as, you know, somebody else asked me, he says, yes. And as I repeated to a couple of people who I've met since yesterday that, you know, I'm pretty ancient, maybe not as ancient as a few in this room, but very ancient. And therefore I'm getting to the stage where, like, you know, every time I come, or very often when I come, there is something or the other which is supposed to be an impediment to the Pakistani being here. And you know, yesterday I just said to myself, you know, it's the classic Clark Gable moment. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And it's come to that.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's for us to plod on. But I have to say that I'm totally intimidated by the thought of holding forth on beauty. You know, the inclination is to kind of tiptoe around the thought of beauty. It's, one finds oneself just unable to encompass its width and its breadth and its essence. And you sort of, and of course I feel utterly ill-equipped because you may have said, okay, I've done this, that or the other with my career, but basically I'm what we call in Punjabi a manji peeri thokne wala. You know, I've taught art, yes, I've made it, but basically my teaching has been about getting other people to make it. And so one is doing, you know, यहाँ से पेच कसा, वहाँ पे ऊपर नीचे हो रहा है, नीचे से ठोक दिया, वहाँ पे वो कील ठीक नहीं डला हुआ, उधर मारो ठीक हो जाएगा, ये ना इस कुर्सी में तो कोई बैठने के लायक नहीं होगा, ऐसे कुछ इस तरह का. I mean, that is for all practical purposes what I've been doing for most of my working life, and therefore, am I really the theoretician who should be holding forth on the notion of beauty, which somehow seems to assume that one works in a higher realm, one has a greater command of, well, theory, which goes beyond practice or describes practice. I don't know. One is overwhelmed because very often for artists, the recognition of something is considered where beauty begins. And I'm not sure that that is a good place to begin. How does one communicate the experience when one sort of says, that's beautiful? Visual arts by themselves, I think, overwhelm one, and speaking of myself, to the point that sifting words and trying to bring them parallel to the visual experience is perhaps the work of people like yourself. I think that then, if one starts prodding the notion further, you start negotiating. And you think, is it for me? Is it for you? Is it for this time? Is it for all time? How do I go about making a profile which makes sense to a room full of people who have had great experience, knowledge of the process of seeing, making, believing, being overwhelmed by? I don't really know where I ought to begin, and so I decided to cheat. Cheating is very hard, by the way, in the visual arts. You know, so one students know that for a fact. So you have to kind of feel. But that doesn't mean that as somebody who's been called to talk about beauty, one is not going to cheat. And I thought, okay, if the notion of beauty is to be shared, then I should look at my community, which is community of visual artists, and see if at least among my peers or among those who I have worked with, some of whom I've taught, some of whom I admire, should I pass the buck to them? That seemed like a very good idea. So I rattled off these emails, which is so marvelous today, when people think that the pursuit of beauty is something in the past. No, it's great to have technology available to bring in the notion of sharing and communicating. So I rattled off these emails to a dozen people. And I said, so, what is beauty for you? Send me an image, tell me. And I also hinted that didn't say straight out, but I hinted that it doesn't have to be a work of art. Also, knowing my community very well, I said it doesn't have to be your own work either. Nevertheless. And so, I have to say that most of the people I asked are younger than myself. That comes with, firstly, most of people my age are dead, among my peers. And there are others, I think, who got lost in the wilderness and perhaps would have trouble responding to the idea of having to sift and bring an image of beauty, recalling an image of beauty. But nevertheless, it's my community. So I sent off these emails. Can I have the first one? No, this is not the first one.
That's the first one.
No. There's an empty white space which says
Yeah, that's the first. That was on.
this was sent by an artist. This was sent by Ayaz Jokyo, who's an artist who I respect, a younger artist. He said to me, it's a tough task, Mrs. Hashmi, but what can I think of beauty right away is in this attached image. And there it is. I have to say that Ayaz Jokyo is an artist whom I admire for many things, Among them is his wonderful and occasionally perverse sense of humor. But here it is. It's an in-your-face response to a person who is so unreasonable as to ask for an image, one image, which says beauty. From Masuma came this, and she says, something that resonates: submission, vulnerability, flaws, and the raw urge to build on the leftover and the damage. That's beautiful. And she said this is a photograph of a wooden life-size puppet of Christ lying inside the wooden casket from Jaffna. And local poor fishermen community used to play the puppets during the local festivals. And today it's an abandoned Dutch cathedral, but they look after it. But she couldn't resist adding something which comes from the realm of words, and she says, and the phrase of Frantz Fanon is beautiful. He says, "Oh my body, make of me always a man who questions." The word appears as an intermediary between the image. You have the next one. This came from a friend, Nazi Shataullah, and it's an image from a video made by Mona Hatoum. The video is about the artist bathing her aged mother. And you see her through this scrim curtain. And it is about tending with love to an aged parent who cannot, for obvious reasons, be shown as she is. But you hear the artist, which of course is not there in the video. In a sense, it's a recall of the video that this artist and I saw together. So perhaps it is personal to the shared experience of watching this video, which was deeply beautiful and deeply moving. So there's this emotional backdrop, if you like. Liza Khan said this, and she said, you know, among the many images that I've been thinking about for the past few days, this is the one that stays with me, partly because I made a watercolor reproduction of this work. And I've been looking at this image for so many years now with bewilderment and amazement. It's The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife, published in 1814 in 3 volumes. And these are works by Hokusai. And she's coming back to it now and thinking about the circumstances of women in Japanese society at a time like this, and other images like this one were being produced in Japan for public consumption. This image makes a very bold statement about female sexuality. And of course, Kudus Mirza would bring the art historical into it, but also perhaps since the beginning of the time that we started making images. The very well-known Venus of Willendorf, any art historical art history student will tell you this is where the story begins. Huma Mulji said this, and she said, looking for an image of beauty has made me think about the impossibility of capturing what one perceives as beautiful. I realize it's never about a single image, nor is it about a single sense, but multiple senses. For example, temperature and light, smell and image, or mostly an intellectual interest or knowledge of something. Or it's inevitably something that holds its opposite within it, e.g. a mountain or the sea, which is breathtaking, but you are always aware of how close you are to death in its vicinity. The one thing I always think is beautiful is good design, born out of need. So here it is. This image is from the guard's post of the Shapes studio, which is a spa in Lobo. So this set me off on another train of thought. Is something fulfills a function with clarity, so clear, there is then no room for anything else, that surely is beauty. Audisham Sayyid, who sends this image of Georgia O'Keeffe about 10 or 15 minutes before her mother passed away 3 days ago. And she said to me, wrote this to me and said, you know, when I first saw this image many years ago, I said, oh, it's so beautiful. Frida Batul says there's so many images which I would consider beautiful and inspirational, like green fields and whatnot. But it had to be one image. So then I said an image which captivates my imagination and has some element of desire. Desire invoked by beauty, for me, is a beautiful male face adorned with jewelry. This is Maharaja Dilip Singh's portrait. So then desire enters into beauty at some stage. The desire to own it, to grasp it, to make it one's own. That's where commerce comes in. This is where the gallery comes in. It's there, you want to own it, you want to take it home. But once you've got it, does it slip from within your grasp? Is it less beautiful because it's yours? Yes. Adila Suleiman sent this still from Kill Bill. And she said, please see the image attached. The most feared and most certain thing in life, death, captured so beautifully that you forget the outcome and you focus on the act of killing and admire it. This is what beauty is for me. Today we are looking at the most horrifying images of killings and worse. Is there then beauty in horror? Ali Raza says, it's the most difficult question you pose, Mrs. Hashmi. Anyway, my definition of beauty is so wide that, you know, I admire the beauty of nature. But what comes to me is one image that struck me and I couldn't forget it since I saw it. It is a photograph taken by photographer Luke Duggledy of the Dhammakyaya temple in Thailand. And as I was looking at this image, I sort of thought, but you know, it's not that far away from nature. It seems somehow to mimic nature. Aisha Khalid sent an image of her own work. There's a wonderful carpet, a very majestic size, which is made out of steel needles that she's pierced a surface with and made a pattern with. And so she said, it's simple, it's my carpet made out of needles. No further explanation required. And equally simple was Ruhi Ahmed from Karachi, who said, oh, but it's a peninsula, the lighthouse of Menorah, and it was taken by a student of mine. And it was about my place, it was about my location. It was about a morning. A time, a moment, man-made and God-made. David Ainsworth says, this beautiful and fragile blue planet from space and the impact on environmental awareness that those first images awoke. Unfortunately, the earth wreathed in clouds here is a lie, but it's a good one. So is there a lie somewhere nestling in the notion of beauty? Faiza Bhatt sends me this from London and says, in that case, if you want just one image, I find my children asleep beautiful. It's life at rest, and I can see them in detail when they are still. This never happens. And lastly, mine. I chose to have two images. The first one that we have seen, I think, and which has horrified us, moved us, been so stabbing with its pain. The child Kundi washed up on that beach. That it seemed like almost the end of time. And then the other image, which I thank my friend Amar from the Sovereign Forest, and reminds me of a song that my mother used to sing. It was a song sung by actually Paul Robeson, which was, and I remember the line which went, poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. And the tree so often is, if anyone has, and I'm sure we ought to have at some time, lay down under a tree and looked up at it, you know, alone with the lover, with the child, simply looking up at it. It is that experience is probably the nearest that one can have to an assurance of the continuity of life and of the persistence of beauty. In a house that I was growing up in, which is a house in which the word was paramount, it was very difficult to escape the notion of the word, however much one wanted to defy it and face it with pictures. And therefore, I suppose I came across very early this notion that, so what would this be if it was in words? And I know nothing about poetry except that it was there. And so one searches and, you know, how does one say beauty in Urdu? That was something that came to me when I was grappling with this. It was certainly not khubsurat or khubsur. It was husn. And if it was husn, then, you know, if I look at the poem which is perhaps the best known of Faiz, certainly not his best poem, but perhaps the best known and the best loved, which is Mujhse Pehli Si Mohabbat Hai Mahboob. And when he says that, you know, लौट जाती है उधर को भी नजर क्या कीजिए, अभी दिलकश है तेरा हुस्न क्या कीजिए. So then there is that problem that the love of the beloved, the beauty of the beloved is not enough. So where does one look then? You know, क्योंकि और भी दुख है ज़माने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, राहतें और नहीं बस राहत के सिवा. So how then, where does one look? And when he says कि हम जो तारीख राहों में मारे गए, अपना गम था गवाही तेरे हुस्न की. So the gum and the husn become clasped so closely that one becomes the other, and therefore there is then that pain in the notion of beauty. And if there is this pain, is it leading us towards truth then? Are we going towards the cliche? You know, is it what we are left with? I don't know. Beauty leads to questions that are unanswered. So I'll leave it to you, Sadan.
Thank you, SALIMA, for a extremely capacious travel through the concept of beauty and its various representations. Since we finished with Husn, I'm reminded of that wonderful song, Sahir Ludhianvi's song in Sahib Gate Your Gulam. Husn par dil zarur jayega, isse bachne ki koi raaz nahi. So Husn is something that is all pervasive and something that will certainly, in various ways, in various, within various capacities, create context. Since you also concluded with the idea of the word, having grown up in a house where the word was predominant, and why not? Bol ke lab azad hain tere is resonating for everybody. I'd like to, before I speak anything, I'd like to begin with a little video clip where the word asserts itself in a particular way. No. The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Rafeeb Ziada. She's a Palestinian poet. Many of you might have heard this, but
I'll start with this poem. I wrote this poem when the bombs were dropping on Gaza, and I was the media spokesperson for the coalition, doing a lot of the organizing. And we had stayed up to about 6 o'clock in the morning, perfecting every soundbite. And by the end, if you're Palestinian, you know most Palestinians get tired and start pronouncing our P's as B's. So we become Palestinians by the end of the day. So I was practicing my P's all night. And the next morning, one of the journalists asked me, "Don't you think it would all be fine if you just stopped teaching your children to hate?" I did not insult the person, I was very polite, but I wrote this poem as a response to these types of questions we Palestinians always get. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits, filled enough with statistics to counter measured response. And I perfected my English and I learned my UN resolutions. But still he asked me, "Ms. Ziada, don't you think everything would be resolved if you would just stop teaching so much hatred to your children?" Pause. I look inside of me for strength to be patient, but patience is not at the tip of my tongue as the bombs drop over Gaza. Patience has just escaped me. Pause. Smile. We teach life, sir. Rafeef, remember to smile. Pause. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians teach life after they have occupied the last sky. We teach life after they have built their settlements and apartheid walls. After the last skies, we teach life, sir. But today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits. And just give us a story, a human story. You see, this is not political. We just want to tell people about you and your people. So give us a human story. Don't mention that word apartheid and occupation. This is not political. You have to help me as a journalist to help you tell your story, which is not a political story. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. How about you give us a story of a woman in Gaza who needs medication? How about you? Do you have enough bone-broken limbs to cover the sun? Hand me over your dead and give me the list of their names in 1,200 word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits and move those that are desensitized to terrorist blood. But they felt sorry. They felt sorry for the cattle over Gaza. So I give them UN resolutions and statistics, and we condemn and we deplore and we reject, and these are not two equal sides, occupier and occupied, and 100 dead, 200 dead, and 1,000 dead. And between that war crime and massacre, I vent out words and smile, not exotic, smile, not terrorist. And I recount 100 dead, 200 dead, 1,000 dead. Is anyone out there? Will anyone listen? I wish I could wail over their bodies. I wish I could just run barefoot in every refugee camp and hold every child, cover their ears so they wouldn't have to hear the sound of bombing for the rest of their life the way I do. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre, and let me just tell you, there is nothing your UN resolutions have ever done about this, and no soundbite I come up with, no matter how good my English gets. No soundbite, no soundbite, no soundbite, no soundbite will bring them back to life. No soundbite will fix this. We teach life, sir. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians wake up every morning to teach the rest of the world life, sir.
Yeah, of course, that's an issue that has been engaging writers, poets, musicians, dancers, theatre people, everybody for a long time. What does one do with the brutality of life and counterpoised against it, often the beauty of nature and so on. One of the finest responses again, somewhat in that way, came from Pablo Neruda in his wonderful poem, I'm Explaining a Few Things. I'll just read the last few lines where he says, after having described what war and aggression did to Spain, where he says, come and look at my house, my broken Spain, he concludes by saying, and you will ask, why doesn't his poetry speak of the dreams and leaves and the great volcanoes of his native land? Come and see the blood in the streets. Come and see the blood in the streets. Come and see the blood in the streets. So this is a how do you say, a tussle that almost anyone who engages with the creative will go through. That when does one shut one's eye and when does one begin to respond to, within quotation, reality. Thank you very much, Ashok and Raza Foundation and 20 and the Threshold Gallery for bringing up this extremely poignant issue at this moment. I think all creative people in this country are going through this conflict in their work, in their minds, in their expression as to how to negotiate the space. And one of my favorite philosophers, Walter Benjamin, had this extremely assertive proposition when he wrote the thesis on the philosophy of history, where he says, no document of culture, and I'm repeating, no document of culture or art, or rather every document of culture and art is also simultaneously a document of barbarism. And it's a framework which is a very provocative framework, and one can extend that to maybe to the concept of beauty too, that every expression, document of beauty is maybe simultaneously also an expression of ugliness. This preoccupation with the idea of form, what the Kantian idea of transcendence, something that goes beyond human intervention and is in the realm of the divine, something that comes unasked for, unbeknown, unmitigated, untrammeled by human intervention, and contains an essence that whether it's a natural form, whether it's a human form, whether it's a creation, something that ipso facto carries within it a certain virtue, the idea of virtue in beauty. So this is a issue that philosophers and creators have engaged with again and again and again. I myself have grew up for the major part of my life with two creative artists, Chandrulekha and Dashrath Patel, who both had very interesting but contrasting attitudes. Dashrath, one of India's leading visual artists, a painter, a photographer, a designer, a ceramist, had this wondrous childlike quality which would provoke him at almost every instance. It could be anything under the sun, and he would stop and say, "Beautiful, no?" There was a kind of standard response here to anything that was happening. Chandra, on the other hand, who had open rehearsals for dance productions, and someone like Ashok would come and sit there for half an hour, watch the rehearsal, and so by mistake, if he were to say, "Hey Chandra, that was very beautiful," "Beautiful? Chuck it. Don't want it." So this was a kind of a counter concert that was going on daily in our lives. A different kind of response to this idea of beauty. And often this came from the location. I mean, the subcontinent is a location for some very, very evolved ideas of beauty and aesthetics from very old times. And you have, for example, the Raza concepts, and already the idea of horror and the idea of ugliness is built into the Rasa theatre. Bibhatsa Rasa, for example, is about grotesqueness as also possessing beauty. So the beauty contained in horror, for example. But it's controlled. The whole point of this is that there is a canonical control here. It's not let loose. There's a particular way of showing the Bibhatsa. My friend, good friend G. Renu, sitting here, one of the great exponents of Kodiyatam in India. And if we were to stand here and demonstrate the Bibhatsa Rasa, we'll all get not horrified, but we'll get attracted to the idea of that kind of demonstration. Probably we should do it. But this is part of the classical forms that you integrate the idea of the horror as something that you can actually enjoy, actually take pleasure from. And so that's a very interesting concept. Or you have the extraordinary situation of a person like Shankaracharya at the age of 26, writing this unusual document called Saundarya Lahari, which is one of the most erotic documents you can ever imagine on the beauty of the female form. And the way he describes the female form, after all, he is writing in praise of Tripura Sundari, or the great universal feminine beauty. And the way he goes into a kind of a lusty, rapturous description of breasts and the hairline between the breasts and the lap and so on and so forth. It's very graphic, it's very visceral, it's very, very tempting, it's very seductive, and it's a spiritual document. It's become like this homage to Sri Chakra, and everybody is reciting it and worshipping with it and so on. Every classical Carnatic musician worth her or his salt has cut discs reciting the Saundarya Lahari. And I think we seem to hear it and recite it without really realizing what it is doing. It's physical human beauty that is being described in a manner that is extremely idealized. So this idealization has its virtues and has its moments in history. My contention is that these kind of idealized overstatements, hyperbolic overstatements on beauty, arise at historic moments where reality is getting extremely ugly, where corruption is rampant, where brutality and violence is rampant, where the caste system is, in one sense, making the social fabric almost impossible to live for a large number of people. And then a very small number of people get into this esoteric realm, into this very, very escapist position where beauty becomes the rationale for resolving all this so I mean, even during the decay of the Mughal Empire, Wajid Ali Shah and company, the whole, or even Ghalib, I would say, this whole preoccupation with engaging with beauty becomes a moment like that where you erase some of the real kind of on the street happenings, and you get into a cloud, and the cloud then is a benevolent cloud. It keeps you happy, it keeps you, I mean, I can live the rest of my life just listening to good poetry and good song and good composition and watching, you know, buying good art and so on and so forth. But it has its problems, it has its limitations, and the modern moment in world history and world art arrives with this questioning of the canonical in art. For example, the entire Romantic period in the West, where keeps saying truth is beauty, beauty is truth, and that the whole engagement with the idea of beauty, including the people like Wordsworth and Shelley, you know, that there's a tremendous engagement with the idea of truth and beauty, or the conflation of the two. But the moment you arrive at AIDS, the whole thing breaks down. It's you could have phrases like a terrible beauty is born. So that whole terribleness of beauty suddenly becomes dominant and so on. But as you move away from those and enter the modernist phase, there's a whole questioning of these canons. Nevertheless, the older canons of geometry, which are dominated by geometry, because the entire Western art arrives from a particular idea of perspectivalism, which is determined by the two-dimensional space, whether it is in the easel painting, whether it is in the proscenium arch, the frame, the thinking around the frame, whether it's in the photograph. It creates a geometric canon set by people probably like Da Vinci and all that, where the golden mean becomes a yardstick. The perfection of form becomes a yardstick. But as we enter the 20th century, we find all these perfections become questionable. They are being challenged because despite all that, First World War happens. Despite all that, Second World War happens. Huge destruction, huge turmoil in what is the perfect society, what is the perfect form, etc., etc. Death and destruction all around. The nuclear moment arrives. I mean, today in America, there's an entire society which celebrates the nuclear cloud as the finest piece of art that the human being has created. It's cynical, it is depressing, but nevertheless, that's become a form that is worshipped and admired as much probably as the Shivalings or something. It's there's poetry around it, there's visual art around it, there are movies around it, there are any number of documentary forms around it. So now, why does that become an attraction? Is a question that we have to engage with for a little while. And then, at the postmodern moment, of course, all this is shed, all this is left behind, and there is a sense of deliberation in which you move from the perfection of the idea of, let's say, music, the perfection of a composition, the perfection of the duration that creates the dhwani within us, the response within us. There's a very deliberate breaking of it. And it comes at a moment where I think the world has decided that, particularly the creative world has decided that the ideas of perfection that we have inherited through history have reach Nadir, and we need to find a new way of engaging, a new grammar, a new vocabulary, a new sense of expression to engage with this. Can we see the video number 2? What I'm going to show is a very famous composition. Again, many of you have seen this. It's by this very famous American composer called John Cage, and it's called 4 minutes 33 seconds. Right, so 4 minutes 33 seconds of non-music, non-instrumental sound, non-vocal sound, and yet you can't call it silence because ambient sound takes over and makes its own statement. So John Cage had this proposition that we are enveloped, or sensorium is enveloped in sound, and the sound has its own musicality, its own musical quality, which is what he tried to explore in this. It became an extremely important experiment in, not experiment, it was a musical contribution in 1952, and since then some of the greatest philharmonic orchestras of the world have, within quotation, performed this in this manner, where, I mean, there's a fantastic recording by the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra of this, which I saw this morning, and that's what I was planning to show. But by this afternoon, for some reason, after having existed on YouTube for all these years, they have pulled it out with a note there saying we pulled it out for copyright reasons. It happened this afternoon. But the amazing recording, a concert hall full of people, about 800 or 900 people in a huge concert hall, the Barbican Centre in London, who sit in pin drop silence and engage with this, and almost like church-like silence, and it becomes therefore very clear that the idea of beauty and aesthetics is not a one-way idea. It's not just the artist's intention, it also has to be the audience's intention. It also has to be the receiver's intent to engage with it. And it then creates, therefore, this idea of a flow. The idea of an aesthetic or the idea of a canon on beauty cannot be something that can be the creation of one person. It cannot be just the poet who says that I will do it like that. It has to be received in a particular manner, and therefore there's a huge process of acculturation that goes through it. And then at any moment you can see that beauty maybe turns hollow, it turns pretentious, it turns too pompous, and then you need an artist to arrive who challenges it, who questions it. And just quickly to illustrate that point, I want to play a small musical kind of a recording, which was done exactly 10 days ago by today one of India's leading Carnatic musicians, who also last month got the Magsaysay Award. His name is P.M. Krishna. I won't say what it is, but I'm sure you will catch what it is. You can play that for just about 2-3 minutes. This is a Rag Behag, Mishra Chaputalam.
சுகம் எல்லாமே ஓடி வரும் அருளாவே நான் தொழுதால் சுகம் எல்லாம்.
What is singing for the first time ever in the history of Carnatic music is an Islamic chant. If I pray to Allah when I'm told, if I pray to Allah, all goodness and happiness will come to me. And it's a 11-minute long composition performed in Coimbatore 10 days ago for the first time ever in the history of Carnatic music. Carnatic musician, Brahmin high caste, has picked up this and performed it, and he got a major standing ovation. Nobody jumped up and said, "Hey man, what are you doing? You're destroying our music, you're bringing alien elements." None of that. But I think it will come. Already the social media space is beginning to jump at him. So, but I would call this moment of rupture. When the alap was going on, the violin and the vocal alap was going on, I saw so many people in this auditorium getting into it. The Bihag rag is a very, very seductive rag, and we all feel, the pulse races in a different way when you hear it. And then the words come and you recoil, hey, what's going on? What is Allah doing here in this place? So it's interesting that a musician can do this. So I think it's a fantastic moment when this is happening. And the reason why we need to do this probably, artists need to do this probably, is because the cult of beauty can also produce a high level of repression. As we saw during the Nazi regime in Germany, it was entirely a cult of beauty. The perfect race, the perfect human being, its eugenics at its height, and as was represented in Leni Riefenstahl's films, for example, The Triumph of the Will and Olympia and so on. So there is a extraordinary political danger here, and one needs to be able to once again, as Walter Benjamin said, the point is not to aestheticize politics, but it's important to politicize aesthetics. And that's a difference that I think the contemporary artist will need to engage with. And since the context of this today evening's thing is visual art, I'd like to also quickly show a few visuals by a contemporary visual artist who comes from a state that is going through a kind of repression and a kind of assault unprecedented in Indian history. And I'm mentioning the word Kashmir, the K word. I think what's happening there, I find it a complete shame that that people of our class and our kind of background are unable to respond to the distress that is going on there. Despite what happened in Uri and all that, I think what the Indian state is doing deliberately out there is unpardonable, and our silence is shameful. But there is an artist from there who's been at work, and yeah, that is Masood Hussain, one of the very well-known artists from Srinagar, and was the principal and teaches in the arts college there. We can, I think, quickly go through. And these are all done in the last 2 months of the curfew and the agitation that is going on. I think it's a very powerful image. Lots of responses to the use of the pellet gun. These are all works of art, and what do we call this? Is this beautiful? Salima ended on the image of Aylan Kurdi. Is it beautiful or is it what? pit stop on that. There is a pain here which I think has to become our common pain if we do believe in the idea of beauty. Thank you.
Before we open it to the house, would you like to say something?
Yes. While you were talking, Ferdinand, so certain questions started popping up. One was, can one talk about the hierarchy of beauty in any way? Because as one gets closer to the bone, it seems to suggest that there could be such a thing. And that comes back to what you ended with. In that final ending, if you like, which you can call fana or whatever it is, the annihilation, is that then the supreme moment in beauty, in the concept of beauty? I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but while you were showing this, I just suddenly thought of this poem, which was written in response to the demand for a patriotic poem. Patriotic painting, patriotic poem, patriotic film, which is made to creative people. So just a couple of lines from this poem, which was called Blackout, and it was soon after the '65 war, more like a skirmish, but a war. And so, just a few lines. Fair said, जब से बेनूर हुई हैं शमें, खाक में ढूंढता फिरता हूँ न जाने किस जा, खो गई हैं मेरी दोनों आँखें। तुम जो वाकिफ हो, बताओ कोई पहचान मेरी। I think that the loss of your humanity is possibly one of the endings of beauty. Is it possible to have beauty after Hiroshima? We talked of the mushroom cloud, but is that possible? And the poem ends by, एक पल ठहरो कि दरिया का कहीं पाट लगे और नया दिल मेरा जहर में धुल के फना होके किसी घाट लगे, फिर नए नजर नए दीद और दिल लेके चलूं, हुस्न की मदाह करूं, शौक का मजमून लिखूं. Then the time comes back to the poet, to the artist, to the filmmaker. Then only can you praise beauty. Then only can you be creative.
Yeah, that was very beautiful, Salima. I'm reminded, there's this, I think probably the finest art critic in the world today, acknowledged as such, this 80-year-old professor of philosophy in Columbia University, Arthur C. Danto. And Arthur Danto has always said that whenever there is difference, there is going to be comparison. And comparison will lead to expressions of taste, and tastes will lead to expressions of hierarchy. And this is better than that, and so on and so forth. And I'm reminded of our great friend Bhupen Thakkar, the wonderful visual artist from Baroda, who in 1984 painted this extremely iconic canvas called The Man with the Bouquet of Plastic Flowers. And he was asked very often, so Bhupen, why did you give this man plastic flowers? I mean, why wasn't he holding real flowers? And Bhupen would get this gleam in his eye and this fantastic wicked smile, and he would say, because plastic flowers are an eternal joy to the eye. Real flowers will fade. So that's inverting the hierarchy. And so the artist has the power to do that, and I think that's where the meat of the artistic engagement with life lies, and I think most artists do that.
Well, friends, you'll agree we had a very scintillating conversation, actually statements, and we traversed a long range from visual arts to poetry to music to silence, etc. So now is your turn. If you want to ask questions or a comment. The comment should be brief, the question should be briefer. So don't ask too many questions. I know you are very intelligent people, but part of the intelligence consists in asking one sharp question, if you have. So go ahead. First one, yeah, please, take the mic.
Perhaps this has been implicit in what has already been discussed, but is it then an imperative for the artist to, in a way, accept the premise of the negation of beauty, becoming almost a kind of responsibility, as it were, insofar as that self-reflexive move which you've been hinting at includes the constant interrogation of questioning of vigilance as regards the possibility of appropriation of conventionalized notions of the beautiful. Perhaps, I mean, this moment sort of occurred, sorry, too long, but just a little further. Think back to the moment of the sublime, when that conception of wonder came to the fore as a result of the conjoining of the horrific or the sort of the grotesque and the beautiful. So that's perhaps one of the first moments we were sort of seeing that self-reflexive element come in, and a further kind of interrogation of what has been received as beauty.
If I were to respond to that quickly, I would say beauty as a tangible element has been appropriated by the establishment and has been appropriated by the market. So to the extent the artist struggles against that, to that extent she is in an area of freedom and she is in an area of possibility. But then the world is not so simple, and all of us succumb to creature comforts and creature needs, and we get into that canonical framework until you're provoked to in some way take a departure, make a rupture there. So what you're saying is absolutely true. There's the artist needs to be vigilant about that moment, and that's why I respected Chandralekha very much, because the moment somebody came and said beautiful, so said, out.
Yes? Don't tell me there's only one question. You came late.
You frightened everybody.
I'll ask a briefer question then. When we hear of things like Poon Ke Dhabbe, and we are describing such horror which is going on in the environment, and we keep saying it becomes boring beyond a point, because you, as a poet, as whatever creative artist you are, you're looking for a new expression to describe the same horror, in which case you're looking for something else, otherwise it will become boring. Now, is that, whether you're describing beauty in beautiful words or horror in horrifying words, is there an element of getting bored by it beyond a point?
Valid. I think it depends on whether it is so beautiful that you can't help being transformed by it. Yes, descriptions and constant description deaden you and you no longer respond. But it is that one time when there is something which moves you, which transforms you as a human being. And I think it is both what is being said, the content of it, but also the fact that the way it is, the medium, the way that the artist or the poet or the novelist or the filmmaker has actually taken that content and assimilated in a sort of a strange process that is very difficult to describe, has then arrived at a work which is sublime, but is also true to its subject. And it is in that moment that actually you are almost unwillingly transformed and transfixed by what you see or what you read or what you listen to, what you see. So perhaps we're talking about both the ability of that medium, who is that human being, the creative human being, and also what they have to say, both the things together. And yes, I think a lesser sensibility makes the most wonderful of things mundane, or the most painful of things mundane. I have to confess that among the images I was sent, there was one of the Valley of Kashmir. And the artist said, firstly it was a K word, and here was I, a Pakistani. I didn't know I was going to arrive the day after, but also, as he said, this is the most boring photograph of the beautiful Valley of Kashmir. The one that everybody has seen forever. And I remember that, you know, my mother-in-law used to say, "Bhai, hamari jawani mein to jab shaadi hoti thi to Kashmir jate." So, and which is of course where she went. But the thing is that it was so banal. And the artist who sent it to me said, "I mean it to be banal." But then I thought, okay, this I am not going to show. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but maybe.
I wanted to intervene in that in a different way. This whole thing of Khoon ke dabbe having become boring is probably a pointer to ourselves. I mean, there's a statistic which says by the time an American child, and today of course maybe we can apply it to the Indian child also, by the time an American child is 11 years old, she has seen over 40,000 images of bloodshed, violence, and war, conflict on the television screen. So by the time you're entering your teenage, you become immune and numb to that thing. So if I need to impress you at that point with something that I need to state a little more, and then I have to say a little more. Today the artist community is going through a phase of silence. Everyone. Because its inability to be able to reach an audience more than at the level of banality. And there's a fascinating story of 8 days after the two Twin Towers came down, the planes went in, the two Twin Towers came down in New York. In Hamburg, a huge concert was to happen of one of the great composers of the world today, Karl-Heinz von Stockhausen. And it was an open-air concert, and 2,500 people, the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra sitting there, everybody in their place, Stockhausen walks in, baton in hand, faces the orchestra, stands for, raises the baton, pin drop silence, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute, 1.5 minutes first, the baton is not moving, he's frozen. And then after about 2 minutes, he turns around, faces the audience, puts the baton down, goes to the mic and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we artists work all our life to create affect." It's a beautiful German word, a transformational potential of of art. We work to create effect. Unfortunately, those two fellows with the two planes have produced more effect in 10 seconds than I have done in my entire life. I think I'm a failure as a musician. Says that much, walks away. The concert does not happen. Shock and awe everywhere. The German ambassador in Washington had to apologize officially to the American government for this, one of the greatest artists, German artists, having done this in public, as if he's endorsing that thing. But he was not. What he was saying was, what is effect? But this is the whole thing. We are now inured to a lot of things. The artist has to show a lot of more blood than to actually get your gut going. There's this wonderful theatre person in Pune called Atul Pethe, who works mostly on Dalit issues. And he has made a 5.5-minute video recently, for which he's got into a lot of trouble, where he sits on a chair like this, camera dead on in front, and wearing white. Both the pajama and the shirt are white. And after about 40 seconds, slightly a drip of blood starts flowing from here, red color. And by the time it's the 3rd and 4th minute, the whole thing has become a gush, and his whole white is turning into red, and the red is spilling all over. And shocking, it's full of this moment of horror, but that's what gets people to start speaking about this. I think artists are devising these strategies now. There is a time for subtlety, there is a time for nazakat, there is a time for all that. But I think today's time, we are in a strange space where one needs to find other strategies and other ways of dealing with this.
Is it time to go under the tree and sit and look at the tree
Lovely,
from down?
lovely, sure.
I think that's where we are now, to enjoy the simple things of life.
Yeah, take the mic.
Hi. Actually, I'd like to respond to something this gentleman here said. Trying to give an example of getting bored with the subject. What I'd like to say is that as a visual artist, I think what I would like to try and achieve is, no matter how mundane the subject, no matter how many times I view it, each time I look at it, it should do something new to me. So the fault is not in the object. Reality doesn't change, our perception does. If you go, for example, if you go to your mandir, if you go to the dargah, you go there all the time, at least if you have a mandir at home. You go there every morning or every evening. Why aren't you bored with that? If you look at a painting or a work of art or nature, it has the ability to wow you all the time. You, as a looker, have to have the ability to perceive that and receive from it what it has to give you, what it has to offer you.
One last question, if there be any. You cannot accuse that we did not give you a democratic opportunity. Well, friends, we come to the end of the evening. The next session of Art Matters will be on 6th October, when the classical vocalist Shubha Mudgal will be in conversation with S. Kalidas. So this will be the 39th in the series. At the same time, if you come a little early, you can get some tea also. On 10th October, we have the Agay Memorial Lecture given by a Gandhian in the India Habitat Center, Satyagraha or Sahitya. Kumar Prashant would be delivering that. And then 18th to 20th October, we have a festival of young classical performers, both of music and dance, called Uttaradhikar, which will be the Raza festival of young classical artists. And this will be held, oh, I think it will be held where? Oh, it will be held in India Habitat Center, I think. Yes. So you're all most cordially invited. As you would have noticed, some of you who have come here for the first time, we are a concerned people. We are concerned about what's happening. A mention was made, you signed it also, we made a statement on Kashmir on behalf of writers and artists and all that. About 75 people signed it in 3-4 days. We issued it to the media, no one carried it. So we are in times when, you know, the fact that you want to do something does not necessarily mean that you will be able to do it. Because the forces which surround you, yes, there is light, but let's not forget, there is too much darkness. And all that we are trying to do in these kinds of meetings and encounters is to keep this possibility of light alive, but also make you face the enveloping, growing darkness. Pascal famously said in one of his, I don't know what was before, he said, but what do we do with our darkness? That question looms large, which is a much larger philosophical and aesthetic and political question. What do we do with our darkness? Thank you very much for coming.